take a look and see possibly where your community is if you're in Rocky Mount. And also, I'm going to keep going here. This is on the northern part of Rocky Mount. This is the Borough neighborhood, which actually goes across the county line. And again, it is split right down the county line, which breaks apart this community. This is the town of Whitakers, just to the north of Rocky Mount, the center of town, right on the county line. You're probably noticing a theme here. And this, and I don't know if we have any folks from Sharpsburg on the call. When I saw this, I was just stunned. This is a town of under 2,000 people, and it's in 3 North Carolina House districts, and that should say House. That's a mistake there, not House and Senate. But these are the House districts. This is in 3 North Carolina House districts because it sits in portions of Wilson, Nash, and Edgecombe counties, and that I think is, presents a real problem for representation and people not knowing who the representatives are, and of course, the area being represented as a community. And so, with that, I'm going to turn things over to Noor from the Southern Coalition for Social Justice to talk about how the legislature chooses which counties to group together when it draws the district lines. I'm going to stop my sharing my screen and take it away, Noor.
Hello, everybody. Again, my name is Noor Taj, Council for Voting Rights at SCSJ. Very happy to be with you here tonight. I get the privilege of talking to you about the very technical issue of how the counties get grouped. But before I get started, I'm just going to share my screen, and I want to make sure that you guys are able to see it. If I can get like a thumbs up or something, if you can see the screen. All right, perfect. But before I turn to that, I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview of the county grouping or county cluster process. You can hear it by both terms. So it's a very technical process. The North Carolina Constitution basically says that no counties should be split in forming districts. On its face, that's a very simple provision. But in reality, that's impossible. I mean, Tyler just gave a great presentation about the requirements, the federal law requirements of having, equal populations and one person, one vote. In order to accomplish that, you're going to have to split counties. And so how do you reconcile the North Carolina Constitution, which says you can't, you got to keep counties whole, with the federal law requirements that do require some splitting? That was basically the question that was before the North Carolina Supreme Court in Stevenson v. Bartlett. That was in about 2002. And so what they did is the court basically came up with a set of criteria to accomplish this. So basically, and I won't get into some of the technical things that are outside of the scope of this, but first you kind of look at what's called Vra districts that are created under the Voting Rights Act. Then you look at what the population is, and so you create, what are the population deviations? Tyler mentioned that every district needs to be equal. That's a very difficult thing to accomplish. So basically they've allowed for plus minus 10% deviation. So once you find out what the ideal population is, you look at the map and you figure out how many counties can basically hold an entire district within its boundaries. So if it's one county, one district within its boundaries, that becomes a voting district. And this is for state house and state senate. These are state legislative districts. Then you look at one county that potentially could have multiple districts, whether it's 2 districts or 3 districts within the county border. Then you look at which 2 counties can be combined together to create one district, or what 2 counties can be combined together to create 2 districts, and so forth. Once you've used all that up, you look at what 3 county groupings can come together to form 1 district or 2 districts or 3 districts, and so on and so forth. So the optimal map is one that has the least amount of counties combined in groups. I know it can be a little bit difficult to understand, but I'm going to show you using this website what that actually looks like. And this again came up in a case called Dixon v. Rucho in the last redistricting cycle. Plaintiffs basically said that they were able to come up with draft maps that split lesser amount of counties. And the court said that's not really what's at issue based on the Stevenson criteria. It's really how to minimize the number of counties that are grouped together. So I'm going to turn to this website because this really, I think it's easier when you actually see it versus hearing it. So when you look at, if you can all look at the map that I have, and I can drop a link to this website that really is a wonderful explanation of this process. And this is using the 2010 census numbers, but again, it's a great exercise to just explain how this works. So first you look at how many counties can hold an entire district just within the border of the county. You start that way. Then you look at how many counties can actually hold multiple districts within its borders. Same, you keep going on and on to see. And so when you get to the bigger counties, those are the ones that are going to hold multiple districts, perhaps 2 or 3 districts within one county. That's really oftentimes where that gerrymandering can really come into play. Then you look at 2 county groupings or 2 county clusters that can hold a district together. So for instance, these 2 counties together can form 1 district. These 2 counties together can form 2 districts, and so on. Then you look at 3 county groupings. You look at 4 county groupings. You can end up with 5 county groupings and even a 6 county grouping, which is what happened before. There was even a 7 district cluster. And that's where you get these really big clusters and oddly shaped districts. And then one thing I wanted to kind of focus on right here is this Franklin-Nash group here, where you have a multi-county, multi-district cluster. The population is going to dictate which county is going to be split. And this happens again in the 2020 numbers, which I will show. So I'm going to just take a look at this. This is the 2020 census data numbers. The ideal population for each district is 86,000. And based on that, there's math geniuses who know a lot more about math than I do, who are able to come up with an algorithm to kind of figure out how do we group these counties to form these kind of clusters that make sense in this numerical order. And this is what they've come up with. So it might be a bit small. I hope you guys can see it on the screen. But for the House districts, Edgecombe is going to be combined, most likely. Edgecombe will be combined with Martin and Bertie counties for a single district. Nash and Wilson counties will likely be grouped together to form 2 districts. Now, this one is where there might be some room for maneuvering because Nash is slightly overpopulated by itself, which means it's going to lose a couple of precincts to be combined with Wilson County. Now, losing a precinct here or a precinct there might seem like that's not a lot. But as we know from previous elections, they were incredibly close. So it could matter which precincts are taken from Nash County and placed with Wilson to form a district. For the Senate, it's going to be most likely Edgecombe will be paired with Pitt County to form its own district. And then Nash, Franklin, and Vance will be 1 district. So these are pretty big variations from the current maps. And, you know, looking at these, it might seem as though, well, if the Stevenson criteria basically determines how counties are going to be grouped together, doesn't that just tie the legislator's hand? What can they do? But there's still a lot of maneuvering that they can do. As I explained with the one, if you're taking some precincts from one and combining it with another, that's exactly what, as Tyler was saying, you know, you can have communities that are split. So it becomes very important to look at where those lines are going to be drawn. And then also, even when they seem to be sort of set in stone, you can take a look at what the, you know, what the Black voting population is, what the demographics, Democrat versus Republican, and kind of start analyzing those numbers within those county clusters to see what are going to become the issues that are rising in the next election, and obviously within the next 10 years. It's sort of a long-term process. So I know this, like I said, it's very technical and it is very numerical, but I can drop the link to these websites that really do a great job of kind of explaining how it works. And I believe Tyler's going to talk about how they have been affecting us in the past.
Yes, thank you so much, Noor. I learned a lot from that. I've always been interested in how these county groupings are developed. I am going to turn it over to Saylor and Gino actually first, because I think that they may have to leave early. So they are going to talk about public testimony, and I'll let them take it away.
Thanks so much, Tyler. We really appreciate it, and I'm just going to show my slides now as well, really quick. If y'all can see them, give me that enthusiastic thumbs up that we love to see. Love to see it, Tyler. Thank you so much. And we are traveling around the state with Noor and Tyler pretty consistently, whether you're at the Draw the Line tour or the Map Our Future tour. Our thoughts are the same, our solutions are the same, our goals are the same, to get folks ready for the redistricting process this year, and also get folks to public hearings and prepared. I'm Saylor Jones. I use he, him pronouns. I'm here with my buddy Gino Nuzalolo. Gino, say hello to the nice folks.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. It's really good to be with y'all in, as Saylor likes to say, the great state of Rocky Mount.
That's right.
We're excited to talk to you tonight about public testimony. And rest assured, everything you see here tonight, you're going to be receiving it in an email to come. So sit back, relax, and we'll talk about public testimony and the all-important process of getting in front of lawmakers. Saylor?
That's right. And your public hearings are coming up soon, as Tyler said. Nash County is fortunate enough to get their own public hearing. And so all of the materials, the slides, guides, some resources, and some incredible toolkit that Common Cause and SCSJ have helped put together to give you everything you need to know about these public hearings to come is at scsj.org/Rocky Mount. Even now, if you want to bone up on testimony and take a deeper dive, get some practice in the night before next week's testimony comes, you can join us at scsj.org/Testimony Tuesday, because we're here demanding transparency. We're documenting what happens at these public hearings, and we'll show you how. But the most important thing is we're getting ready for testimony, and we're doing it with 3 types of testimony. First thing I'll say, just really briefly, Tyler laid the groundwork for this, but we are in the redistricting process this year, and Noor kind of showed you how they're going to put the pieces together. And they started doing that in August by very quickly passing on August 12th the criteria, or as Gino calls it, the rules of the game by which they draw our maps. Some of those include things that Tyler talked about, like contiguity or compactness, keeping things together, not packing and cracking them, but also equal population, part of what both Tyler and Noor discussed as so important as keeping us in that one person, one vote arena. So those criteria passed August 12th, and they didn't give us a ton of time to give public comment on the criteria. In fact, they proposed them on August 9th, and by the next morning at 8:30 in Raleigh, they were asking for your public comments. So a little less than 16 hours of notice to give public comment on the rules of the game of redistricting this year. If that doesn't frustrate you, on August 18th, they proposed where the public hearings would be. Now, back then, there were 10 public hearings. On September 1st, we didn't hear anything for a while. And then on September 1st, they dropped the actual public hearing schedule on the website, kind of buried it deep in the innards of the website, and they were announcing 13 public hearings, which we'll talk about tonight. Now, all of this culminates in what Tyler and Nora were talking about, the maps being drafted. They've told us they'll probably come out in early November. But that means when we have public hearings between September 8th and the 30th, we won't have maps to look at to respond to. And so we get a lot of questions about what can I say if I don't have maps to look at on the state and congressional level. And we're going to give you 3 types to talk about. Last thing I'll say, these maps will probably be passed by December, since that's when candidate filing begins. And you can't file for public office if you don't know what district is. And so that's an artificial deadline we're using to know when the maps are going to be done. So these are the criteria. You're going to get all of them. But we have some concerns about 2 of them in particular, and we'll take a deeper dive when we talk about the process testimony, the first of 3 we'll talk about tonight. And these are your public hearings. As Tyler said, Nash is coming up soon and on September 15th, so we won't get you ready with the right testimony. And so we're going to start with the testimony types. You're going to walk into these public hearings. In the past, they have looked a little bit like big public forums. You know, you go to a big gymnasium, you walk in, you're going to sign in to say you want to give your testimony. They'll call you maybe in the order that you came. With these hearings, you can get there about an hour early and sign in, or you can sign in online, and we're going to give you the link for that. Gino, if you want to give testimony in the chat, we can do that now. You're probably going to get about 2 minutes to speak. 2 minutes is about 300 words, friends. So this is about how long the longest testimony can be, and you can see it's not a lot. So we're going to want to pack a lot into those 300 words, and this is how we're going to do it. So I said there were 3 types, and I'm going to start with process, then I'm going to kick it to Gino for community. But the process type is really for folks, and this is by popular demand, friends. We were just talking about community testimony, talking about the things that Tyler and Nora were talking about. We don't want our communities of interest divided. We want to keep our communities of interest together. We don't want bad groupings of not simply counties, but divides of those groupings that split up counties. Right now with the 2019 maps, there are 9 counties that are split up by even the congressional maps. So we're going to talk about process for people who maybe are new to their community. We've heard a lot of people say, I don't really know how to talk about my community. I don't really know how to talk about how maps are impacting our neighborhood. I want to talk about something else, and I don't have a lot of time. What can I do? So that's where process testimony comes in for folks who are feeling overwhelmed by that community-based testimony. Now, why do you do process testimony? Well, if you don't have a lot of time and you are feeling overwhelmed, but you are frustrated by a process that's kind of cut you out of the criteria, maybe you're upset at the public hearing process, not giving you a lot of notice of the public hearing process, that's what you can talk about. It's easy to do because a bad process already exists, friends. We haven't gotten a lot of notice about the criteria. We haven't gotten a lot of notice about the public hearings. So we saw last night in Caldwell County, the vast majority of the testimony was about the process, especially since we don't have maps to look at to respond to. Why you might choose another form of testimony, friends? Well, for the same reason. Process testimony isn't mappable. And if you don't give folks a location and an action, they won't be able to map it, and they won't be able to create maps that you deserve. So we have recommended community testimony along the way, but we want to give you those process tips for folks who don't feel comfortable giving community testimony. So if you have limited time, just walk up if your head's spinning and you don't know what to say, you can talk about how angry you are at the process thus far, which a lot of folks did last night. And you walk up, introduce yourself. It's very easy. Hi, my name is Tanya Smith. I'm a new resident of Hopeville. I'm a new resident of Rocky Mount, but I'm here today in support of my fellow members of my Rocky Mount Church and to demand a better process in the hearings to come. You'll notice right there at the beginning, we put in what we're asking for the committee to do in the future. Maybe you want a process that gives you hearings after draft maps are ready. Again, we have no guarantees that they'll come back to Nash County to give you a hearing once the maps are drawn. So maybe you want to demand that. But you want to get that in early because you've only got 2 minutes, friends, and that 2 minutes can go by quickly. If you save what you want till the end, you may run out of time. Next, what you probably want to get to clear goals. You're going to point out some things. So maybe you're there because you're upset that the criteria was passed within a few hours of being proposed to the public, that there wasn't much time for the public to give input. So you can talk about what the problem is, the lack of public notice and participation in developing redistricting criteria, the lack of public education about redistricting criteria. Apparently, the General Assembly does not have a Nortage or a Tyler Day because they have very little information about the redistricting process on the website. Friends, Texas has a better redistricting website than the great state of North Carolina does, explaining word for word what their criteria mean. So we can do better and we should do better, and that can be a part of the problems that you point out in your testimony. Finally, we want to say that the redistricting criteria is really insufficient and problematic. Now, we can go through each one individually and say why there's a problem, but we really want to talk about racial considerations here. They said they're not going to take race data into consideration in the criteria. Well, no race data not being considered in your maps is actually detrimental to voters of color in Nash and Edgecombe counties. The committee's race-neutral redistricting policy is detrimental really to ensuring that Black and brown voters across the state are able to elect their candidates of choice. Now, while race cannot be the predominant factor in drawing our voting maps, it can be a factor. In fact, the courts have said it probably should be a factor and have seen that as a red flag when it is not used. In fact, the same court decision that defined the whole county criteria, another piece of this puzzle, mandates the creation of voting rights districts first. Well, you can't build voting rights districts, VRA compliant districts, without knowing the race of people in those districts, friends. So this is a problem from the very start. This could be a problem you identify in your process testimony in next week. Now, there were hearing problems as well. I'm going to go quickly through them. They've slashed redistricting hearings this year. Again, I told you there are 13 sites. They're going to have hearings across the great state of North Carolina. We had over 60 sites for redistricting hearings back in 2011. We can do better. They've omitted crucial details from the process, friends. Less than a week before these hearings, they're giving us address information. Many people in Caldwell County last night, because the address information came so late, went to a different location. They missed the hearing because the General Assembly omitted crucial details from the process. That's something you could bring up during the hearing to come. There were no hearings after maps are revealed. Again, we think through Common Cause that we're only going to get one Raleigh in-person hearing after maps are revealed. That's a problem, friends, when you live in Nash County and you need to drive all the way to the legislature to make your voice heard on those maps. It excludes a lot of the big counties. Wake's not on there. Buncombe's not on there. Guilford County is not on there. So, and it ignores language access and other accessibility issues. You couldn't see what anyone said last night. There was no live stream. But friends, there sure was a live stream of the hearings back in 2017. We have the technology, and they haven't given it to us. These are the hearings. You can take a picture of them to the testimony and show them all the places the hearings were in 2011 and all the places they are not now for your friends and neighbors across North Carolina. And here's the hearing schedule. We wanted to make sure to include it for you so you could have a slide to show at church this Sunday to let people know where the hearings are. Now, your story can also be a solution. And before I turn it to Gino for community testimony, I just want to let you know we're not just about problems here. Our testimony needs to be about solutions. Maybe you had to take off work early because the hearing wasn't at a convenient time. Maybe you had to drive pretty far across the county to get there. Maybe you felt like you were putting your health at risk by not having a virtual option on the day of the hearing so that you could phone in or broadcast in like they did in 2017. Well, solutions are consulting with the public before they draft these hearings and really finding out from you where you want to go and how far you can drive to get there. They could also provide those hearings after maps are drawn to make it a little easier to provide the type of community testimony I know you want to give. So we have plenty of demands for these hearings that you could put in as a solution in your process testimony. I won't go through all of them here. You're going to get these slides. But just know that much of our demands for our hearings could be important solutions in your process testimony next week. And you can also act now at scsj.org/demandbetter and ask your lawmakers for the very same stuff we'll be asking for in process testimony tonight. Next up, we got community testimony. And for that, I'll stop talking and let Gino start talking.
Thank you so much, Saylor. And I just want to start really quick with a little bit about why this matters. Now, you might be sitting in the audience and we are nonpartisan, but you might be thinking about the political dynamics in North Carolina. And you might be asking yourself, why would I even go to the effort to put together testimony and go to these hearings and say it in front of lawmakers who clearly have shown throughout this process that they don't seem to care much about our voices? There's two clear reasons for this. One, North Carolina's been through 11 redistricting cycles in the past 10 years. 11 redistricting cycles. As Tyler told us, this is a process that's only supposed to happen once every 10 years. Y'all want to know why we've had 11 redistricting cycles in the past 10 years in North Carolina? Because people, just like you, in this Zoom room, came together, saw that the process was junk, had issues that they wanted addressed, put together public testimony, and packed the House at hearings all across the state to demand better. And then later on, there were some folks in the courts, some judges, some justices who saw what the community said, saw that the lawmakers didn't take into account what community members said, and then told the lawmakers they had to go back to the drawing board and get better maps of North Carolinians. Everything we do at this individual and at this community level to put together effective testimony that we tell to lawmakers directly, that's what helps us to get better and better maps. That's what helps the struggle that we are in continue. That's one reason why this is so important to get right. The second is that state redistricting isn't the only kind of redistricting that we're involved in. You've also got local redistricting in your counties, in your cities, in your towns. And when you craft effective public testimony, especially in a specific community-based way, as I'm about to tell you about, the chances that local lawmakers will listen and take into account what you asked for dramatically skyrockets. I'm not just making that up. That's data that we've got. It skyrockets. So I wanted to say both of those things because I think this is where public testimony really, we get into the juicy stuff. And community testimony takes us away from just process focus to talking about a specific location and a specific community. As the Brennan Center based in New York told us, 64% of comments at public hearings were able to be mapped, actually put on a map. And that they were mapped because the public testimony that was given to them included a location and an instruction. And community testimony focuses on location, provides the requisite clear instruction that actually makes map making easier and says, we want to keep this neighborhood together. All right, we will keep this neighborhood together. Now, as Saylor was just showing on the screen, in the past, we've given people generic talking points to use for their testimony. We're not doing that anymore. We need to speak specifically about the places we live and the issues we face when we're trying to give this testimony. We have a chance to do more. Now, when we're talking about community testimony, might just ask if folks are able to make sure that they're muted, that would be real helpful. And if any of my co-hosts see folks are unmuted in the chat, that'd be great. But there's some common kinds of community testimony asks and things you could specifically ask for. You could be asking for a city or a neighborhood to be kept together in a single district. I know there's a city that I can think of that's in eastern North Carolina that's currently split between two counties, and maybe you want to keep that whole city together, potentially. Now, you also might want to draw a group of cities together in a single district or use well-known boundaries for your districts. These are all kinds of things that you can ask for, and this kind of testimony is the best for people who have lived in their communities for some time. Maybe they're affiliated with a church, a union, a PTA, a faith group, and you have a good understanding of the kind of issues you face and what you want to see out of better maps. So how do you do it? How do you write this community testimony with 300 words, 2 minutes? How do we write it? Well, in a lot of ways, it's very similar to what Saylor was just talking about, the process testimony. You're going to start by introducing yourself, any organizations, any coalitions you work with. The great thing about community testimony and working together with a bunch of people is that you can all come to the public hearing with one goal in mind, but you have an individual story to tell. And when you put it all together, you're singing with one voice. So think about that, individual stories, but singing with one voice focused on one goal when you're working together. Now, after you've introduced yourself, you want to be really clear on your goals right from the beginning. Let your elected officials know why you are there and exactly what you want them to do. And then that's when you get into the story about your community. And write what you know. I promise you, if you're maybe a little bit hesitant or a little bit concerned that what you're writing is effective, if you're writing about yourself and what you know in the community you're fighting for, it's going to be perfect. What we just need to think about is what is our community all about as we're creating this compelling story? Like, what makes your neighborhood unique? What kinds of geographic and structural boundaries define your community? What kinds of coalitions or issues have you been facing? Is it affordable housing? Is it traffic? Is it about parks? Is it about broadband access? Think about all those things. Like, for example, I'm here in Durham, North Carolina. I live in an apartment complex of like 20-somethings, 30-somethings. We're bordered by a busy street called Duke Street on one side. We've got Pearl Mill Creek on the other side that kind of bounds our neighborhood. And all of us are concerned about the rents in our area. We're concerned about the lack of public transportation. And so if I were to craft testimony about where I am in Durham, all of those things would go into how I define my community. Now, when you're creating your story and you're talking about your community, the way we break this down is we think about the 3 C's. We think about culture, we think about concerns, and we think about count. Culture is what I've been talking about so much. It's about the people in your community. It's a shared history. It's a shared language. It's about shared values. Culture is all about people. Concerns is all about the issues. What issues need attention from our government? What community projects need resources? Have you been calling a certain elected official wherever you are 20 times in the past 2 weeks and they never return your call? Those kinds of concerns. And then the third C being count. Is there data that we can present that strengthens our stories? Can we talk about demographics where we are? Do we know what the income levels are? Do we know how far it is to get to a hospital or a school or a grocery store? And does that mean that only people who can get there are ones who can afford cars because there's no public transportation? Those are the 3 C's. Those all go into producing a story about yourself and the community you live in, and it becomes a really compelling story. You then go immediately from that into the consequences. If you don't get what you want, or if you have a good situation and it gets changed for the worse, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to the community? Does that mean you're going to get an elected official who never returns your calls? Does that mean your political power is eroded? Think about those kinds of things. Or does it mean that the issues that you have been facing for the last 10, 20, 30 years are just going to stay the same? So be really clear on the consequences of not getting what y'all want out of this process. You end with your specific solution that you're asking for in these maps about what kinds of districts you want to see. And then finally, you close it out. You say thank you to folks. You end your testimony. And one thing you really want to make sure to do, I know some folks might be comfortable more speaking off the cuff. Some people might be more comfortable writing things down. You can bring notes to this. All that's important is that everything you say and exactly what you want to say gets on the public record. Gets on the public record. That's that goes back to why I was talking about 11 redistricting cycles in 10 years. It is crucially important. That's community testimony. And now I know we're getting toward the end of Saylor and I's portion, and we want to be real quick. So Saylor, you want to tell us about allied testimony and what to do if you're trying to be in solidarity with other communities that got clear agendas and clear goals?
Yeah, real quick. Allied testimony is our third and final testimony. We're in the short rows now, as my people from Rocky Mount used to say. So this is the testimony that comes from the folks who visited us at the various trainings and events who said, I like my districts. I really don't have anything to say. Well, absolutely, you do have something to say, friends. And we have a person at every single event who says, I got nothing. I like my representative. I like my district. I want things to stay the same. And maybe our population went up, and I think I can get another representative. So I want to talk about that. But allied testimony is so significant that our executive director wrote her own testimony about this, and you're going to get it in your packet as well. So you've gotten sample testimony on process, you've gotten sample testimony on community testimony, and now you've got it on allied testimony. And what Allison Riggs's testimony tells us is there are ripple effects of bad map making, and they touch everyone, friends. Nobody maps can be redrawn in a vacuum. Well, no, we got a 14th congressional districts this year because our population went up to about 10.5 million people in North Carolina. We're the 9th largest state in the union. And with great representation comes great responsibility. I think Spider-Man said that. But the reality is this means that our districts will change. And when they change for the better for some, they may be changing for the worse for others. And we need to keep that in mind in our testimony as well. So allied testimony can be standalone testimony, where you just talk about the fact that maybe you live in a county that may be adding population, adding representation, and you know your county deserves that, but you don't want it to come at the expense of Black representation or Latinx representation. And that is allied testimony. But you can also weave allyship into your community testimony, as Allison has done here, and make explicit your allyship in that testimony, and making sure, I want my neighborhood intact, but I also want to go small, because the smaller you go in that community testimony, the less you impact other people in your county, other communities of interest, because we don't want our communities of interest defended at the expense of communities of interest that have historically represented underrepresented groups. And so we can be an ally in our testimony by looking around and seeing, are we taking too much in our asks? Are we not being an ally to other communities that we have worked in other places, in voting, at the legislature, in the budget and education to defend? Redistricting is no different from any issue. It has ripple effects into other areas, and we can be an ally in this regard as well. The easiest way to do that, friends, is collaborating ahead of time, doing what you're doing tonight, making sure that folks aren't working at cross purposes while they're grasping at crumbs, but rather we're working collaboratively to share our specific story, but as Gino said, to sing with one voice. So we'll have tips on post-map testimony in a few months. Hopefully when the maps come out, we'll be back in your neighborhood to do that. But we do have more best practices in our presenter guide, but we're preparing for hearings now. We want to get you to those closest locations. We're demanding more hearings maybe in our process testimony. You're preparing your testimony over the next few days. You're looking around to see who in your community isn't here and making sure they come with you to testimony. You're promoting it on social media. We're doing that even now. People are posting their testimony videos to Facebook and Twitter. And you're also using virtual options to comment. We're going to give you those links. So that was step one. You're the step two. We can't write your testimony for you, but we want to give you all the tools that you can use to fill in the blanks, because when we fight, we win. This is what testimony looked like in 2017, friends. Now, they were packed rooms, packed to the gills. It may look different this year because of the Delta variant, but the reality is this packed house showed interest, and it was part and parcel to the argument that the court saw that we needed a better process. It was not given to us People got little notice. They even had to take their babies. And so we documented the process that was flawed, just like we did in that process testimony. And we got new maps in 2019 that served more North Carolinians in the 2020 elections. We can do it again. So we're demanding better tonight. We're asking who isn't here. We're planning for a public hearing in Nash. We're sharing those hearings with everybody we can on social media. And meanwhile, these slides look good on social media and in church. We're sharing those hearings. We can share this slide out. You're attending the hearings near you. Look at where it is. It's at Nash Community College. As soon as we know where at Nash Community College, we're going to send it to you. Here's the hearing schedule you can share. If you need a travel reimbursement, you need gas money to get there, I need an overnight stay, you can go to scsj.org/hearingstravel to find out more about that. You can even send your testimony if you don't feel safe. You can go to the online portal that the General Assembly set up at scsj.org/portal, or go in person and share it online. Why not? And share it on social media. Tag it at Get Out the Comment, and we'll share it as well. Finally, we're going to give you in your packet all the testimony we've got here for process, community, and allyship in English and Spanish. This is the way that you can cut and paste it right into the General Assembly's accounts. It's not pretty, friends, but it works, we think. And this is, again, what it looked like in 2017. It may not look like it this year, and we are very aware of COVID. So we're flooding the lines in the way we can. We're emailing, calling our lawmakers to demand a better process. We're submitting testimony safely if we need to, providing written and virtual testimony through the portal. We're providing alternative outlets for posting testimony too. Don't just send it into the General Assembly. Send it to the newspaper or post it on social media. We're volunteering, and I know you want to join us. Maybe we'll provide masks, sanitizer, and PPE at local hearings. And we're encouraging people to get vaxxed up and show up and be the leading voice in your community after this training at these public hearings in person. You can monitor what you see there. A lot of people wrote into us and said they had trouble finding it at scsj.org/monitor. And we've also got funding for community groups who are working to monitor redistricting. You can get up to $10,000 from these grants. You can apply tonight at scsj.org/solve-grants. If you're working in your community on redistricting, you should get paid while you're doing it, and these grants do that. So we want to thank you. Everything you see here is not at WNC Tour. It is actually at scsj.org/Rocky Mount. And I was hoping to get there in time, but I will not do it. Tyler, I'm going to turn it back over to you, my friend.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sailor and Gino. That was great. A lot of really, really great information. I will also just let you know that the precise location for the Nash County public hearing is Brown Auditorium at Nash Community College. So just make note of that. We're getting close to being done, but I do want to show you some more examples of some things that you can use in your testimony that you may want to bring up from how things have been done in the past, and how these districts have been drawn, how that has affected the local community. So this is Rocky Mount. This is a map showing you the Black population. The darker shading indicates a higher Black population in that precinct. A lighter shading indicates a smaller Black population. And what you can see here is that the western portion here of the city, this southwestern portion around Woodridge, Berkeley, this area over here is, it has a smaller Black population. Well, when you look at the 2011 U.S. congressional districts, it looks, there's a correlation here. This area, in the southwestern portion of the city, was left out of this congressional district, District 1, the yellow district you see here. And also this district, District 1, the yellow district, is a part of a district that was struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court for being a racial gerrymander. What they did is they packed black voters across the state, and in this situation, they packed black voters on in central and eastern Rocky Mount into this yellow district, again, keeping out the southwestern portion of the city. And now overlay some of the communities here so you can see how this affected the city. Again, I want to point out, you may be asking, why am I showing the 2011 maps? This is what they did after the last census. Now, Gino talked about all these cycles that we've had. All of that has happened because of court cases that have challenged the maps, and so they've had to redraw them. And at the latest maps that we had, they had to be approved by the court. These maps, there will not be there will not be judges looking at them before they're, judges will not have to approve them. And the last time we were in a situation like this, this is what we got. So I just want you to be aware that you could have a situation like that. I'll show you this as well. These are the 2011 Senate districts. Again, a similar situation where you see this southwestern corner of the city being cut out from the rest of the city. And in this situation, they did split along the Nash Edgecombe line again, so you had the city split into 3 different North Carolina Senate districts, also separated from the town of Dorches and other points to the west there. And I'll also just show you a kind of a similar situation when you look at the Senate election results and how the 2011 Senate districts follow the election results here. So the red shows you precincts that went for the Republican in the 2010 U.S. Senate election in our state. The blue districts are districts that went for the Democrat, and again, the darker the shading on either for either color indicates a more of a partisan leaning. And you can see that there is definitely, I think that there's a correlation between this section of the city which has been or was cut out in the 2011 maps. And again, I will overlay those communities there. And lastly, I'll just show you the city was split in the 2011 congressional districts, 2011 Senate, North Carolina Senate districts, and 2011 North Carolina House districts. Not just Rocky Mount, other cities and towns throughout the region were split. And particularly, I want to focus on the North Carolina House districts from 2011, which just severed Nash County. This is Castelia, and these are small towns where the district line came in and went right into downtown, splitting the community. This is Spring Hope from the 2011 House districts. Again, there's no reason to do this. There's no reason to split up this area in this way, other than, they're trying to do this for partisan advantage or for some other motive. You wouldn't normally split a town like this. This is Nashville. I'm showing you just the incorporated area first, and this is what they drew. Again, this is a town of a little over 5,000 people, and it has just been cut up. And I'll show you some of these are just a few communities. You can see how the town has been separated. And I'll show you here, this is the Cottonwood neighborhood in Nashville. This is Mulberry Road. There it is on the map. And this was a dividing line. And it showed, you can see here in this photo, this was a dividing line between two North Carolina House districts. So literally next door neighbors were in different districts. And I'll also just point out here, Nashville Elementary, Nashville Central Middle School, separated by just less than 1.2 miles, but they were in different North Carolina House districts. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. And that's this is an overview of Nash County, so you can see what that looked. I mean, this is really egregious. If you look at this green district, just snakes all over the place. And again, these are all the cities I've just shown you, cities and towns, which were split. Most municipalities were split in this 2011 House map in Nash County. I'm just going to switch over to Edgecombe County, and likewise, these are the 2011 U.S. congressional districts, and there was no need to split the county. The county is well below the population of a U.S. congressional district, but they did indeed split the county, and these cities and towns up to the north were put in the yellow district, while the southern part of the county was separated, and you can see that here. I just want to highlight Tarboro for a moment. Notice that this chunk of Tarboro has just been carved out. Well, if you compare this to the 2010 U.S. Senate election results, you can see that what has been done here is there's been a separation of voters based upon political party. And this section that was carved out is a district or a precinct that leans Republican, while the more heavily Democratic precincts or more even precincts were placed into the yellow district. You see there. And I'll just want to end this section by showing you this. Rocky Mount and Tarboro both split in this district. District 1 from 2011, but I just want to give you an overview of all the cities that were affected, all the cities and towns that were split: Wilson, Greenville, Winterville, Butner, Washington, Kinston, Goldsboro, Mount Olive, Plymouth, New Bern, Durham, Hertford, Elizabeth City. All of these places were split, and you know, what happens is that when your community is split, and you live in one of these communities, you're having to compete with people in terms of, expressing your needs, expressing what you want. You're having to compete with people from a completely different region of the state. I mean, this district stretched all the way to Elizabeth City, down south to New Bern. These are areas, quite a distance away from Rocky Mount and Tarboro in Nash and Edgecombe counties. And again, this is what the legislature did the last time they drew maps after the U.S. Census. So I think we should be on the lookout. So I just want to wrap this up by saying, when your communities are split, your voting power and representation is split too. That's really the bottom line. Legislators are less concerned with the communities they were supposed to represent. Some take their reelection for granted. I talked to one of my former colleagues. She no longer lives in North Carolina, but she had told me she had tried to speak to her representative to talk about this issue, and her legislator told her he didn't have to talk to her. I think that is just outrageous. I mean, this is, the fact that a legislator would tell you, I don't have to talk to you, is really terrible. Our tax dollars are used by state legislators to defend these gerrymanders in court. It's our money that is being used to support these gerrymandered maps. Due to constant court cases, our voting districts change far more often than they should. Gino talked about that earlier, and this creates confusion. People don't know which districts they're in, and in recent years, computer mapping software has made it easy for legislators to draw maps with extreme precision. They can go down to street level house by house and pick who they want to be in each district. And lastly, if you don't remember anything else from this, I want you to remember this. Through gerrymandering, state legislators are picking their voters, not the other way around. That is the antithesis of a representative democracy. And with that, I know that we are going over time. I did want to give council members T.J. Walker and Mayor Pro Tem Richard Joyner, both council members from Rocky Mount. If you all are on the call, please feel free to unmute yourself and say a few words, make a few remarks about why this is important to you, why this should be important to Rocky Mount and the overall area.
Well, I don't know if TJ and Richard are on the phone. This is Councilman Lodge Daltridge, and I'm new to the Zoom, so I hope it's okay if I say something. But I didn't see them on, so I just wanted to make sure this group knew that the City of Rocky Mount, we at our last meeting decided to hire the firm of Pointer and Sproul to help us with redistricting our wards. We have 7 wards, as everyone knows. And if you'd like to go and see what we've done, I think our next meeting, I'm looking at the minutes now, and it has an overview of what went on at that meeting. And they're also on our Facebook page and I believe on YouTube. But in a nutshell, Pointer and Sproul is going to help us equally divide as best we can. It has to be plus or minus 5%. In 2019, if we took the estimate of population for Rocky Mount, that's 54,548 people. The ideal ward would be 7,793 people. Plus or minus range would be between 7,403 to 8,183. There is a process, and I think Common Cause has gone over this very well, but just for Rocky Mount, we were given a somewhat of a timeline. It's not written in stone yet, but the preparation window is August 27th, which is passed, and then the legacy format data delivery, and then the 16th to the 29th, the census data processing, and between the 30th of August and November 17th, which is 11.4 weeks, possible redistricting window, and it's much shorter than past cycles. And then September 15th to 30th, the final census data delivery, and then November 17th to December 5th, the Board of Election processing time. So this would be my first time involved in redistricting. Actually, Councilman Walker and Councilman Joyner and Mayor Robertson, this will be our first time involved in this. And so we, I think the entire city council and mayor, from the city perspective, I think we look forward to making it as equitable and equal process as we possibly can. And it is much easier, I think, from the city perspective as opposed to when you get to the state. And so anyway, I just wanted to give that overview because I didn't see any of my fellow council members on here. But I did just want to give you that overview. And if you have any questions, the city clerk, Pam Casey, has the information if you want some more information about that, or call me or email me. I'm more than happy and open to answer any questions. Quite frankly, I'm learning as we go as well. But anyway, thank you for the opportunity, and if you've got any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Thank you very much, Councilman Daltridge. I think we have Councilman Church, so I'll hand it over to him.
Appreciate it, Tyler. Thank you to Common Cause and to all of you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you all for just putting together this awesome event and just informative session. But redistricting is very important, and as someone stated earlier, it's a way for us to be able to make sure that we are
Thank you, Councilman Walker. I don't know if Councilman Joyner is with us. Um, Councilman Joyner, are you with us? All right, I don't think he is. So with that, I know that we have gone a little over than what we were planning, but we have a lot to get to, and I think a lot of important voices to hear from. So I hope that this has been helpful. I do want to open it up to any questions that you all have. Now, I will say first that we will be sending out for everyone who is registered for the Zoom, everyone who has joined at the church and signed in. I'll be sending out a toolkit for you that has information. It's going to have your legislator's contact information. It's going to have helpful items for giving public testimony. And I know that Sailor and Gino have resources from SCSJ that they will be sending out as well. So I do want to open it up if anyone has any questions, or if you have any comments that you would like to make, concerns that you have about how the districts are drawn, anything that you'd like to say, please feel free to unmute yourself. If you're at the church, feel free to come to the computer. And actually, before we open it up to everyone, I don't know if Sarah Pevler is on. I don't know if, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your
I am.
name. Okay, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but
Everybody does.
yes. Well, I just wanted to make sure. I know you've been trying to talk, and you've been disconnected from the Zoom. So, but I'm glad you're here. Please, go ahead.
My interest is making sure that Edgecombe County is represented in this conversation, because it seems as if the dividing line is about Rocky Mount and it goes to Nash County. We have Tarboro, we have other communities, and we really need to be aligned with Nash County and not Martin County as we move forward. And I think that this is one of the really critical questions for Edgecombe County. Where are our interests and where are our affiliations?
Yes, I think that's very important, and I think that that's something that you want to say, when you're giving your public testimony. If you think that Edgecombe being paired with Martin or paired with one of these other counties is not best, if it's possible to be paired with Edgecombe, you want to advocate for that, and so that's a great point.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any comments that they would like to make, or any questions that they have?
Tyler?
Yes.
Yes, this is Sidney Dunstan. The comment that the young lady just made from Edgecombe County, I think it's very, very relevant. That's why I raised the question earlier. Is the hearing on the 15th? Is that the last opportunity that we'll have to give public comments, other than having comments to be submitted virtually?
Yeah, that is the closest hearing to the area. I mean, it is in Nash County. It's closest to Edgecombe County. There are other public hearings, but they are far away in other parts of the state. So in terms of giving public testimony, this is your chance. This is the way that they've done it. Now, there are a few others. I think there's one in Greenville. I know that's a good distance. There's one in Durham. But that yes. Now, there is a public comment portal online where you can submit comments anytime, and I did put that in the chat. I'm going to be sending that out to everybody so that you have that. But that you can submit comments anytime to that comment portal. And you can also send comments to your legislators specifically if you want to email them, call them. You can do that.
Okay, and that's very important. It's very important for everybody to understand because the gentleman mentioned that the state of Rocky Mount had employed, I believe, Pointer and Sproul to do the redistricting for the city of Rocky Mount. Pointer and Sproul is a very, very conservative firm, and that's why you have to be very, very in tune to how they do that if you want representation. You know, you may have the numbers, but it won't have the balance that's needed to have fair representation. Just a comment.
I understand. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Does anyone else have anything that they'd like to share? And any questions? The floor is open.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
criminal stance in Edgecombe County. I see Councilwoman Deborah Jordan from Tarboro is on. My question is, the elected officials play a major role in this, I would think. So, we as citizens need to make sure that we reach out to them and make sure we are represented. And then, just because it's in Nash County, if we are serious about this, then we need to make sure that we are represented. If we can't be there or ever how we need to do it, we need to make sure that we, our voices are heard. And Greenville is only about, I would think that we would want to make sure that we were represented in Nash County, and then Greenville is only about 26 miles from where I am in Pine Top, Tarboro. So, I mean, to me, we just need to make sure that we make sure our voices are heard and reach out to your elected officials. And if I'm not correct, I think if I'm correct, that most of the local bodies have got are using the same lawyers, if I'm not mistaken. But I stand to be corrected. But that's what I wanted to hear. Thank you. I appreciate you.